Alrighty, thanks for everybody being here today for Speaking of History. Today we have Kerry Kriseman. She will be talking to us about the book that she put out in October of this past year, written during the pandemic, The Accidental First Lady. What's the Accidental First Lady? The Accidental First Lady is actually the lessons that she will be sharing that she learned over a 22-year political career of her husband, Rick Kriseman. She is also the PR manager of Creative Clay, which is an organization serving adults with disabilities through creative arts programming. The book will also be available in the bookstore, the gift shop, which is also our bookstore, right here for $18, and she will autograph it immediately following the presentation. So without any further ado, Kerry Kriseman.
Thank you, and thank you for being here, and thank you guys for having me and inviting me. I'm very happy to come out here and talk about something I really enjoyed doing, and talk about a big chapter of my life, which was political spouse to my husband. So political spouse and partner. I think I'll start off talking a little bit about how this book came about. We never envisioned a life in politics when we got married, and I know that, when you're with someone and for many years, things will happen that you didn't think were going to happen. That's part of life. That's how life goes. But I'm going to say that when I met Rick and we got married, I knew he was a lawyer, and we were ardent voters, and we both even worked on a political campaign of our own, helping out friends or whatever. But never did he say, someday I want to run for office. So it was 1999 when this first started. A friend of ours, former state legislator Lars Hafner, I don't know, if people have been around for a long time might remember him. He and Rick were good friends from high school, and at that time Lars lived down 6 blocks in our neighborhood down the street from us, and he called on a Sunday evening and says, "You guys home? What can I stop over? Are you doing anything?" And we're like, "No, we're just hanging out, and come on over." So we pull out a bottle of wine, and I couldn't tell you if it was red or white, but Lars sits down, we pour some wine for each of us. Our daughter was 15 months old at the time, and he says to Rick, "How about you run for city council?" And Rick's like, "What?" So he thought about it, and it was a race where the incumbent was liked. He was doing a good job, but I think Lars thought maybe someone else might do a better job, and there's always people who feel it's time for fresh blood, and I believe that's true in a lot of cases. So that was the reason Rick was approached to run, and so it was kind of interesting. We just gave it thought for a couple days, and this was January, and at that time the city council election in St. Pete was going to be in March. So we were getting in at the 11th hour. So we were, sometimes what you don't know is a benefit in some ways, because we probably would have never done it had we known what we were up against. And so we got in. He got in, obviously, for city council, and we had a $25 a head wine and cheese fundraiser at our house, and I'd sit at every night and stuff envelopes, as the case may be. Now people are texting from their phones to reach 200 voters in 5 minutes, which I just learned how to do that. I was helping out a school board candidate recently, so things have changed. But that set off. He didn't win that first election, but he got a respectable 42%, I believe. So he's, his advice, the advice that was given to him was stay in the mix, stay involved if you like politics, if you think you want to. So he got on the nuisance abatement board, and eventually, the dominoes fell, and that state city council member that beat him ran for state house, which meant he needed to resign his seat, which meant that somebody needed to get appointed to city council, and it was Rick. So that's how it started, and that was in 2000 that he was appointed to city council. And throughout the years, we had our daughter, and then our son came along in 2002, and for me it was just kind of rolling with the punches while you're raising kids and living life, and everything that comes with life. And usually the politician is the one who's out in front, as it should be. Their name is on the ballot, and everything. And a lot of people don't think about the people behind the politician. And that's, like I said, that's fine. That's his job. He chose to do that. I don't need anybody, talking to me or wondering what I do. But I think people started to get interested after so many years, and in recent years, politics has gotten so much more contentious. They realize how it affects them personally, so then it made people think about how must it affect the family. And so that's when, it honestly wasn't until after he won re-election to mayor in 2017, I was having coffee with a friend, and she asked me, it was a very contentious re-election campaign. It was divided the city. It was the most expensive in the city of St. Pete's history at the time, and it was awful. So, really was. It was hard. And so I gave her the stock answer, or not the stock answer that I give in the grocery store. I gave her the truth, that I said it was hard. It was hard on our son, who was starting high school. It wasn't as hard on our daughter because she was at University of Florida in college, so she was removed from it a lot. And so, and our son was exposed to the day-to-day. And then I was telling her a few things, and she said, "You should write a book." And I was like, never thought of that. So, my background is in writing. I've always done some form of writing for my job, and so I know I can write, but to write a book, I gave it some thought. I bounced it off a couple of people, and a few published authors, that are local to this area, like Jeff Klinkenberg is an old friend from the Tampa Bay Times. We worked together when it was the St. Petersburg Times, and he gave me some great advice. So I really tried to do my homework before diving into the process. And but I will say, if you ever thought of writing a book or something and it's in you, to go for it. You don't have to need anyone's approval to do that. So that's what happened. I started writing the book, and while I was working still, so I wasn't dedicating every day to writing. I'd write at night. I wasn't one of those people that says I get up at 5 every morning and write for a half hour and write 500 words a day, and then I have a book at the end of 6 months. That wasn't me. But it's been fun, and it's been an honor, and it's been an honor to be at places like this and talk to people about it. And so I think what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of reading. I've got some pictures to show you, and then we can pause a little if there's questions. We don't have to wait till the end, and if that's fine, if that works. And so obviously that's the cover. Go to this next slide. Okay, so this is Rick was elected to the state after serving 6 years in city council in St. Pete. He was elected to the state house in 2006, and he served 6 years there. You can serve up to four 2-year terms, and so he did 3 2-year terms. But basically, that's the kids and I visiting Rick at the State House. I'm going to read a little excerpt from the book because it was such a life adjustment for all of us when he served. Session is 60 days long, and so he has to be there most of that time. And I think over those 6 years, we logged 20 round trips to visit him in Tallahassee. And we always tried to make it fun. I think we did every museum, park, event that you could do to try to have some fun while we were there. And with us, if you see down at the bottom, is the first guide dog puppy that we raised for Southeastern Guide Dogs, Jim. And he actually brought Jim onto the house floor. So but for me, Tallahassee was a whole nother animal than city council in St. Pete. And so I'll read a little bit of that from that. Swearing-in day at the Capitol was crowded with families and well-wishers. Toddlers to teens tagged along with their parents in the rush to find their seats. There were so many babies. Our kids hadn't been babies that long ago. I remembered how exhausting those early days with infants can be. My life would be changing, but at least my kids were somewhat independent and slept through the night. People I'd never met seemed to know Rick. This was on swearing-in day. They congratulated each other and exchanged backslaps, those half hugs between men, trying to avoid an all-out embrace. I was introduced to countless people, but I could only recall a few names. We held on tight to Jordan and Samuel, leading them through the narrow maze of white-walled hallways adorned with black and white photographs depicting images of Florida's history. Winding through the Capitol hallways left me dizzy. We found my mom, Aunt Marcia, who we called Amy because that's all I could say when I was a toddler, and my cousin Shella. They would sit in the gallery with Jordan and Samuel, while I joined Rick on the house floor. After passing through what felt like a secret underground tunnel, we emerged in a different section of the Capitol. It was like opening the airplane window after landing. This part of the Capitol looked and felt different. We whizzed past offices, including then-Governor Jeb Bush's, before checking out Rick's new digs. Swearing-in day is a production. I tried to take it all in, but it felt like swimming against a current. We waded through swarms of lawmakers, legislative staffers, lobbyists, and families as we ventured to the elevator that would send the kids with my mom to the gallery. Rick and I would follow the rest of the legislators and their spouses to the House floor. We found Rick's desk near the back of the room. The House floor was not the place to be if you detested crowds. I was immediately regretful when I saw the huge bouquet of congratulatory flowers sitting on Rick's desk. They were from the political parties, lobbyists, and other favor seekers. There should have been a bouquet from the kids and me. Each swearing-in and the beginning of session thereafter, I made sure a big spray from Blossoms on Monroe Street was on his desk. We sat at the too tiny for two desk while other House members, Democrat and Republican, approached and introduced themselves with hugs and small talk. Marco Rubio, now a U.S. Senator, was a speaker then. As the youngest speaker in Florida's history spoke, I wondered what he and Rick might have in common. Opposite political ideologies didn't prevent him and Rick from establishing a rapport. Rick appreciated Rubio's sense of humor, which can be an asset when debates become raucous. Back then, Rubio understood that relationships are nurtured when colleagues can mingle socially. The congeniality legislators shared over a meal was often absent in committee meetings and over the House floor. As soon as Speaker Rubio pounded the gavel, I heard, "Mama, Mama, Mama." I looked up to my left to the gallery and made eye contact with my mom, who was holding Samuel. His arms were outstretched. He was almost 4 and often refused to hold my hand in public. Independent and strong, his arms were reaching for me. His face was red and wet with tears. I looked around, figuring everyone else could hear him too. My mom held Samuel up. She thought if he could see us, he might calm down, but that only infuriated him. The cocktail of crowds, noise, and activity had taken its toll. I considered leaving the House floor to get to him in the gallery. I knew I wouldn't be able to find my way through the halls that reminded me of a fall festival corn maze. I didn't even know which elevator would take me to the gallery. I had no credentials, so the security guards probably wouldn't have let me re-enter the House floor. I didn't want to miss being there when Rick was sworn in. So I stayed on the House floor and looked straight ahead, avoiding eye contact with Samuel, knowing he was in good hands with my mom. My peripheral vision caught glimpses of him. Amid the speeches, clapping, and cheers, all I could hear was "Mama, Mama, Mama." Next was brunch in the House members' family lounge. The long rectangular room was packed with toddlers running around and families picking over muffins, warm fruit and cold eggs, potatoes and bacon. It was another loud, overstimulating environment with a plentiful supply of germs. Many of the kids had their first colds of the season. Excuse me. We met more people whose names we wouldn't remember until we were introduced later in session. We visited Rick's new office again, imagining where the family photos, plaques, and plants would go. We took in the panoramic views of Tallahassee from the top floor and walked around the rotunda. Then it was over. That was it. That was swearing-in day. That was my introduction into Tallahassee politics. Excuse me. I am running behind on my allergy shots, so I'm a little dry. But
That must have been such a tense moment to hear him calling for you. Like,
it was, and knowing you can't do anything, and he's up there, and and so independent, but not when he couldn't get what he wanted, which at that moment was to be sitting right by us. So, but the kids eventually adjusted, obviously, and we made a lot of trips back and forth to Tallahassee. Early into the season, or the first session, they have the Democrat-Republican softball game. It's an annual event, and Rick would always call us around 7:30 at night, because the kids went to bed early and they were young and everything. So I waited for his phone call, and it never came. And so I knew he had the game. So by the time it was maybe 8:30, I thought, well, I'm going to call him, and just see if everything's okay or whatever. And he's like, oh, hey, we just finished the game. And talked to the kids very briefly, and then said he would talk to me later. Excuse me. And so anyway, I found out later that he broke his leg, and he was at the hospital. He didn't say anything about that the whole time. And he's like, he was running, he loves Jimmy Buffett. And so there's a song that Jimmy Buffett has, and the words are, I rounded first and never thought of the worst till I studied the shortstop's position. Crack went my leg like the shell of an egg. Someone call a decent physician. So he lived that song. But we lived in Tallahassee then for a little bit after that. But he was like, don't worry about me, I'm fine. My friends are going to take care of me. And I said, no, they're good guys. I said, but you have a leg cast from the top of your thigh down to your ankle. You can't drive. You need a lot. So thankfully the kids were little. Samuel was in preschool. Jordan was in 3rd grade. I could take them and just go. I was a stay-at-home mom at the time. So anyway, that was quite the adventure. But throughout those years, there were other adventures as well. And when this one comes up, I'll be in the Jimmy Buffett fan. We had a really cool opportunity to have some fun with Jimmy Buffett before one of his concerts. Jimmy Buffett is known for his efforts on conservation, manatee conservation in particular. So Rick asked the Florida legislature to make it Jimmy Buffett Day, a proclamation for his work. And so on a Friday afternoon, during session he could come home some weekends. So he was on his way home and he calls me and he's like, can you meet me at the amphitheater, the Florida amphitheater, at 3:00? I was like, why? And I was on my way to get the kids at school. And he says, we're going to present the proclamation to Jimmy. And we were going to the concert next night already, so I knew he was there. But they had the proclamation, and again, you can see the blue down at the bottom. We had another guide dog with us, and that was Elvis. But so we all got together, and met Jimmy Buffett. He gave him the proclamation. We got to sit and listen to his band rehearse before he did that. But it was really, a great thing to do because he has done a lot for the state of Florida and so forth. And the gentleman on the right is Rick's chief legislative aide. His name is Kevin King, and he ended up working in his administration while he was mayor. But are there any questions right yet about anything? So. After he did the 6 years in the state house, people started talking to him about wanting to become mayor, and we thought about it, and everything is timing. And in 2009, it wasn't the right time. We had a house fire in 2008, and then spent the next year rebuilding a new home, and Rick had a medical issue that has been since resolved, but it took up the better part of a year, and had to have surgery and such. So the timing just wasn't right. But throughout his time as a state legislator, we were lucky enough to meet, then Senator Obama, and our daughter met Michelle Obama one night. One of the stories was that everything seems to be last minute, and sometimes the opportunities that end up being such great memories are nothing you plan or imagine. The picture over there on the right was Mrs. Obama was in Tampa while her husband was running for president, and Rick was the first politician on the west coast of Florida to endorse Obama for president, and so he was invited to an event in Tampa with Michelle Obama was going to speak, and I was supposed to go with him. It was at somebody's house, and an hour before we're supposed to leave, our son comes down with a fever, and it was too late to get any of the grandmothers or our sitter to watch him. So I said, well, why don't you bring Jordan? She was 9 years old, so she, was a good student and could stay up till 9, on one night a week or something. So she, she met her, and I guess when she met her with Rick, she meets Rick and says, hi, nice to meet you, but she went right to Jordan. She just, and just wanted to talk to her because Jordan's the same age as their older daughter. So they started talking about American Girl dolls and, what she likes to do and things like that. And, it's a really, really great memory for her and stuff. And, throughout politics, a lot of it was, it was hard sometimes. I'm not going to imply that it wasn't hard. But then sometimes people would pity because Rick would be out late at night or traveling, and I would always say, I know where he is. God willing, I know he's coming home. He's not serving in the military, or he's not even a doctor that works overnight. He comes home at night, even if he has to call the kids to say goodnight, and his travel wasn't really that much. And so, and plus he chose this. This wasn't something he had to do, and we chose it together as a couple. And I guess we chose it as a family. The kids grew up in it. I mean, they didn't have a choice, but it's been a a lot of good times and a lot of stressful times. But anything that is like that is it's worth doing, and definitely. I like to say the people that we met, through the process and campaigning were really the highlights, because those are the people that you see face to face and and they talk to you about why they voted or they ask you questions. And I would always think, if they trust enough to ask me about what he wants to do, then it's up to me to educate myself so that I can speak and be an active, supportive, participant, spouse in the process as well. So, we, that's kind of how I started to look at it, because it wasn't, he's more extroverted for sure, and I'm, introverted. I have never desired to do that or anything like that. But, people will ask, about the perks, and we never expect the perks that have come with his elected office. That's election night, the night he won mayor. Our son was watching the returns on the computer. And his team, when we pulled up with the kids to the alley behind the event space, the team already knew that he won, but they didn't tell Rick. They could tell by the mail ballots and the percentage that came back that he won. They knew a couple of weeks before that he was pretty much going to win that election, but they didn't want Rick to let up on the gas, in campaigning. So, but our son was, he's still I don't think he's going to go into politics, but he's very interested in it still and loves the process. But so he was, what was he, almost 11 there, and looking at the returns and such. But, there have been some really, wonderful moments. This next slide is going to be one night we were invited to the Poynter Institute for Media Studies in St. Petersburg. Has a dinner every year where they bring in a high-level media figure usually, or author. And that year was, I think that was the first year Rick was mayor, so it was probably 2014. Dan Rather was there. And I mean, that was really just something. And we sat with him at dinner, and, I was between Rick and Dan Rather and the editor and CEO of the Times, who was, it was interesting. So it was fun. I used to work with him, so I was very comfortable around him. But that was a really wonderful opportunity, and it's not lost on us to be in the presence of people that, and then who are just so down to earth as well and wonderful to speak with. So, but then of all the invitations that came, and there were a lot of them. I mean, when he was on city council and then even the state house, we would, he and I would go through the invitations together, and he always said he didn't want to be out more than 3 or 4 nights a week, and that usually didn't happen. But but by the time he was mayor, the invitations never came home because there were stacks, and his staff would go through them and then figure out what he needed to be at and stuff. But I'm going to read a little bit about this one because this is probably one of the most unexpected but amazing events that we've ever attended. It's as you can see, the White House holiday party in 2015. All right, so this is from chapter 12, cordially requesting the honor of your presence. So I'm going to get into the little bit of the chapter. It says, in the beginning, invitations felt like intrusions that took my husband away from me when I wished he were home helping with the kids or sitting next to me on the sofa. When it was clear that Rick wanted to devote most of his working years to public service, I decided to embrace this role. I began to view social events as opportunities to learn something new about our community. I looked forward to finding at least one person with an interesting story. Often we'd end the evening as friends, promising to follow up at coffee or lunch. Of all the invitations we received over the years, one stands out. The invitation sent electronically from Barack and Michelle Obama to attend the 2015 White House holiday party. We felt like we'd won the lottery. Rick and I had admired Barack Obama since the first time we met then Senator Obama on a cold Sunday morning in February 2007. That was the previous picture. We stood in the driveway of a modern corner lot home with expansive rounded windows that faced Tampa Bay. We were among a handful of guests who spoke with Obama before he went inside to address the crowd. By the following February, Obama was a presidential candidate. I'm going to skip over the part where I told you about Jordan meeting Michelle Obama. 10 years later, after Jordan met Michelle Obama in 2007, a call went out for memorabilia to be considered for inclusion in the Barack Obama Presidential Center. I sent the photo of Mrs. Obama with her arm around Jordan and the story of the conversation between two American girls, a future First Lady and Jordan. Shortly after Rick was elected to his first mayoral term, he was invited to join other new mayors at the White House for a round table with President Obama. The Oval Office meeting wasn't run by a cabinet staffer. It was Obama who listened when Rick talked about affordable housing and climate change. Like Obama, Rick also had hope. As a new mayor, he wanted to reduce poverty, increase equity, and create a better life for St. Pete residents. He's so real, Rick said. Rick returned home with a chocolate White House that will never be eaten, matches that will never light a fire, and souvenir napkins embossed with the White House seal. The Obama's holiday party would be our second visit to the White House as a family. Our first trip in 2007 included a self-guided tour where 5-year-old Samuel impressed a security guard in the Blue Room who asked him to name another United States president besides Abraham Lincoln who died in office. Without skipping a beat, Samuel blurted out, "William Henry Harrison." Still determined to stump him, the security guard asked Samuel what caused President Harrison's death. "Pneumonia," Samuel said, correctly identifying the infection of pneumonia that Harrison's doctor and many historians say killed the 9th president after only 32 days in office. Parent volunteers who'd observed Samuel in his kindergarten classroom would stop me in car line to tell me how Samuel recited the presidents forward and backward. The hard-covered Dorling Kindersley Book of Presidents was weathered with its spine. It laid next to his bed. Reading and rereading the pages nurtured a natural curiosity for history and politics that had nothing to do with what Rick did for a living. The only security guards who spoke to us the evening of the White House holiday party were the ones who told us to empty our pockets and purses. Twice they waved their wands over, under, and in between. We stood in a long line that weaved like those at Disney. We searched for familiar faces amid the ball gowns that sparkled against the business casual ensembles. There were men in snappy business suits and men in chinos and blazers. I wondered how they became to be invited to a White House holiday party. I surmised that our invitation was the result of Rick's steady support of Obama. He was the first elected Democrat on the west coast of Florida to publicly endorse Obama's first candidacy for president. We finally got into the hallway that led us to the room where hundreds of partygoers were already gathered. Tuxedoed waiters milled through the crowd offering champagne. We ran into Rick's 2013 campaign manager, Cesar Fernandez, and his fiancée, Eileen, who already had their champagne. Behind the main room was a long rectangular room with several tables. The platters of shrimp, filet mignon, cheeses, fruit, and the best macaroni and cheese I would ever eat hadn't yet arrived. White and milk chocolate replicas of the White House, ice cream sundae stations, cheesecake platters, and candy lined the perimeter of the room. We postponed our champagne for 4 front row spots across from a lonely lectern that stood like a wallflower waiting for a dance partner. I was sure that that's where the Obamas would stand when they addressed the crowd. My toes, which had been shoved into rarely worn black patent leather pumps, barked angrily while we waited for the hosts. I thought about the front row seat I'd had to Rick's political career and how it led us to the ones we had that evening. Make friends with your neighbors, the man from Obama's security team suggested as he proceeded down the line, repeating the same instructions every 3 feet. Without taking a breath, he recited how we all could get a picture with the Obamas. No selfies with the president, he warned. We were to give our cell phones to the person on our left. They would take our photo with the Obamas. Our new friends would return our phones and give us theirs. We would snap their pictures. A memorable and historical party favor for sure. After about 90 minutes, the crowd grew silent. Hail to the Chief played, and the Obamas descended the grand staircase to join the lonely lectern that was now the center of attention. We were only about 100 feet from them. President Obama speaks as if the words are only meant for you. He seemed to lock eyes with every individual in the room. His jokes made us laugh, but his words inspired. We had no idea how much we would miss his calming and intellectual oratory once he left office. That year, the Obamas hosted 20 holiday receptions at the White House. I'll bet Michelle Obama could tell me about her sore feet. But I forgot about mine as we strolled the White House halls. The Christmas tree dedicated to military families, each ornament a service member's story, brought tears to my eyes. The life-size replicas of Bo and Sonny reminded us of our Labradors. Vanderbilt University's a cappella group, the Melodors, drew crowds as they sang beautiful holiday songs. If Rick hadn't said yes to running for the city council in 1999, we would have probably spent that Friday evening falling asleep to Netflix. Instead, Rick and Samuel got high fives from the president, and Jordan and I got one of Michelle Obama's famous hugs. It felt like a reunion with old friends. Nothing lasts forever, and the political bubble eventually pops. Politics has brought challenges that we would not have had if Rick had continued running his law practice. But this life has also provided gifts. The physical ones, tokens of appreciation and awards, usually end up in Rick's City Hall office. Gifts of experience live in my heart and in relationships I have with people I might have never met if I wasn't a political spouse. That has left me humbled, inspired, and grateful. Michelle Obama's life changed because of her husband's job, but it didn't change who she was. She is married to a man who was the most powerful person in the world for 8 years. She had been a political spouse for 18 years, but that night in 2008, when she spent a few moments talking to a little girl about dolls, she was a mom. Long evenings picking at chicken dinners, standing next to Rick while others lobbied him, or waiting at home while he advanced his career, led to one of the most treasured evenings of my life. I am grateful to have been invited to the White House holiday party. I am also glad I listened to my teacher's advice. Always pick a seat in the front of the room. That's where the best stuff happens. So that was a memorable, very memorable night. So,
They don't
I
let
don't
you
know.
take selfies. They say, okay, because that's probably like a bad angle.
Yeah, or something. I don't know what it is, or maybe just getting too close. Well, we were close. I mean, look, she's right next to me, and I don't know. Maybe just the whole, I don't know. I'd be interested to see. This was another memorable moment, and I'll tell you, the book isn't all the fun stuff. There's some, I'm talking about some of the fun stuff because this is a talk and I don't want to, be too heavy, but there's definitely things in here about the challenges and personal things that our family and I had to go through during the 22 years, all while in the public eye, and it just created some challenges, but we got through everything. This was when the Tampa Bay Rays played the Cuban national baseball team, and we visited Havana, Cuba. That was a really wonderful trip. I mean, it was just so educational, so enlightening. We loved just being around, the Cuban people and talking to us. And Rick doesn't have a hat on because he gave his to somebody on the street. They all knew that people from Florida were coming, a baseball team was coming, and so they were talking to him about his hat, and he just gave him his hat. But that's the stadium, and that's leaving. You notice the jet, if you can read those letters, Eastern Airlines. I mean, that left from Tampa, but Eastern Airlines doesn't fly, but that plane, they still use it. So that was kind of funny when we arrived there. It was a chartered flight we weren't with the team, they were on their own flight, but it was kind of funny because I think the Rays beat them 2-1. And so we're sitting on our plane trying to leave, and it's like taking 2 hours, 3 hours, and we're like, oh my God, everybody's on the plane, and our bags are here, we're all set to go. And they were saying, we need to find the person that can move the stairs away from the plane. Until then, we can't leave. And I joked with Rick, I said, that's a little payback for our team winning. They're making us sit here. Well, he's like, nah, that's not it. Well, then we heard the next day the Rays sat on the tarmac for 5 hours before they left on their plane. So they had a little fun, I guess, got a little last minute dig in, with us and everything. But this next slide that's going to be coming up, and you let me know how I'm doing on time or. Okay.
But we started late, so you could go.
Okay, all right, yeah, I'm coming, Okay, so we've all heard the expression, the 15 minutes of fame, right? And they got their 15 minutes of fame, and, there's like that one time where something's really excited, or you wind up on the news, or, or you meet your favorite rock star or something like that. Well, throughout 22 years, that's a long time, we were lucky to have enough of those, or not enough, several of those. And one night, got to meet Ringo Starr. Rick was the mayor at that time. He wasn't the mayor, but he was on city council. The mayor was supposed to present a proclamation to Ringo Starr, who was playing at Mahaffey Theater with his all-star band, and he was going to give him a key to the city, not a proclamation. He was going to give him a key to the city, and the mayor couldn't do it. So he asked Rick. So we went to the show, and it's a great show. He just played here a couple weeks ago, and I think at Ruth Eckerd. But anyway, we went, and we got to meet Ringo Starr, and it was just like a Beatle. That's a Beatle. And at that time, Rick had met Bill Clinton and, a few other politicians. And I'm like, who's cool? What's cooler, meeting a Beatle or Clinton? And he said, the Beatle, of course. But, and the picture on the right is another very impromptu moment. But the day before Valentine's Day in 2019, we get a call from somebody who used to do PR with the city, and she's like, Hallmark is here filming a movie in the area. And I don't know if y'all are aware, but Hallmark has filmed several movies in the Tampa Bay area, and so they love coming here. Well, they were at the Museum of Fine Arts that evening filming a scene, and it was Valentine's Day 2019, and so we didn't have anything big planned anyway, so it was a weeknight. It wasn't like we were going out. She's like, would you like to be extras in the movie? We're like, of course. So I had that dress. I mean, I didn't go buy anything. I had it already. And Rick had a tux that he's had for, I don't know, probably 10 years, but it comes in handy, when he needs it. So we did that. Those are fake champagne glasses. And we went to the Museum of Fine Arts, and the scene was out in their courtyard, if you've ever been out there. And there was a reception for the mayor, the movie mayor, and it was a female mayor that was in the movie. And so we were there clinking glasses with people, making fake party talk and nibbling fake hors d'oeuvres and stuff, or passing them. But it was really, so fun. And then we just kind of were like, wonder if we'll make it in, it was so, literally, they had a screening at the Palladium Theater after it was finished and everything. And so we went to the screening, and we still didn't know, but honestly, you could have blinked and missed us, but we did make it in the movie. And it was, so hey, I've been in a Hallmark movie. Love Blooms Here, I think. True Love Blooms. Yeah, it was, I don't watch those movies, but as I say in my book, I can appreciate how they transport people. I mean, we all have some escapism, whether we read or there's some show we love to watch or what we do. So fine, if you like Hallmark movies, I think that's great. Enjoy them, and they're wholesome. And
Somebody likes them because they keep pumping them out.
yeah. Well, the person that helped set it up and get us there, she's like, they have a template. Basically, they've got the introduction, the love, the conflict, the climax, and then it's something, that always works out great in the end. But I think they were trying to build community gardens in the city. That's the premise of the movie. And they were coming up against developers. I mean, imagine that. So, I think that was it. We watched it at the screening, but honestly, I've never watched a Hallmark movie. But, then again, that's not to say they aren't good and don't serve their purpose. But that was fun. And I have I didn't really work in it, but I majored in it, broadcasting, and I did intern at Channel 13 years ago when I was at USF. So I have a broadcasting background, at least I studied it. So I love the process. And ironically, Rick and I did not go to college together, but he was a broadcast production major. And so we both kind of had similar college studies, and so we got to just be behind the scenes, most of it. I mean, our scene wasn't until like 2 hours after we'd already been there. And but just watching the process and how it all works, and it was a lot of fun. So I just enjoyed that, and talking with the actors, and they had people. It was interesting, the extras, they do this. People who are extras do it a lot, like they'll get a call like, oh, I just got a call at 4 from Orlando, so I just got here, and they probably just say dress up and show up. so it was fun, and that was a really cool evening. And any questions yet or anything? Anybody, anything you want to know? Anything I've said that needs further explanation or anything?
I know what you mean about being an extra in a movie because I was in California.
Oh, good.
It's wonderful.
Wasn't it fun just to be?
Educational.
Yeah. What movie was it?
Process of making a movie, even though you do the same thing
Mhm.
10 times.
Right.
when you're filming.
Yeah.
It's really something, yeah.
What movie was it?
Sideways.
Oh,
It's a very famous movie.
is that about wine?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Very cool. So what did you do?
I just stood there.
Okay. That's,
Right next to Sandra Oh.
oh, wow. Very cool.
And I walked down the parking lot with somebody, but that was cut.
Okay.
It didn't make it.
Yeah. It's funny. There's they film so much, and then it's
Yeah.
like so much of it doesn't make. How fun. Well, there's more
I can
opportunities.
relate to the
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, it was, I just love the background and seeing, the behind the scenes and everything. So this was the summer of 2017. I'm just ending on this last picture. Again, like I said earlier, his most eighth and most politically contentious campaign ever. It was 2017, so we know how politics has become in recent years. Well, it trickles down. It's in every community now, as we know, that it has the potential to be nasty. And this one was just, our daughter was home from college. Our son was still in high school. So we were walking into a debate at the Palladium. And this was, it was before the primary, but Bay News 9 and the Tampa Bay Times had limited to the debate to the top 2 candidates, because at their point there were still 6 candidates running for mayor. So it was him and Rick and former Mayor Rick Baker that were the opponents at that debate. And a Tampa Bay Times photographer, Dirk Shad, caught this photo of us, and I just love it because, well, I guess because I know what's behind it, but you can see our faces, and I'm faking a smile over there, and but stress, the sides of the Palladium were his people, our people, and it was just so divided. And the people I knew casually, not like I had good friends sitting on the other side, but still, you see people that you think, and they're, I don't know, but it was hard. It was a hard, time, but Rick did great at that debate, and he had just exited the car after singing Pitbull's Fireball. He'd put Pitbull on to get wound up. I mean, so loud in the car. And and then before UF started using it, Tom Petty's I Won't Back Down, and I know it's all perspective, but he felt sometimes the media treated him harsh. Some of the media, not all of the media, but it was just, they had an agenda of who they wanted to win that election. And so that's just how it was. But so people were like, you all look like you're on a mission from God. So that's, for a while, it was my profile head banner on Facebook and everything.
Look like a movie trailer intro.
Well, with the sun, I mean, we're walking in, it's like 7 o'clock or something, I guess. I don't know what time that debate started, maybe 7, so it was shortly before that. Hot. It was July 25th, I remember the day. So.
How do you deal with, presenting yourself in a graceful, political way and just knowing that people are misunderstanding you? Like, how did you do that? Like, did you do yoga or did you, what did you do?
Like how did I, we just tried to, conduct ourselves as we should, and know that we, just need to rise above it. And I love to walk, and that would be, my outlet or whatever. And, just get through it, knowing that tomorrow's another day. There's always another news cycle. And it wasn't like he was getting beat up in the news every day. But if there was something, and because we always knew, the whole story, and they never report the whole story, or if you read between the lines. But, and, we good friends, it wasn't like I was always calling, oh my God, but, we'd have people calling with support and stuff like, which really meant a lot. And it's just knowing that, you can get through it, and this is just politics. It is real life, and that knowing that I believed he was doing what he thought was the best job. I mean, he's the first to tell you, not everything he does, everyone's going to agree with him. Where does that exist in life? If it does, then somebody's not being honest. So, but people could at least respect. And so as long as he felt like he was doing an honest, best job he could do, then we could live with that. And the more years you're in it, the more you know that people are just going to say what they're going to say. And I'd stop looking at social media, but it's there. I use social media for my job. I can't ignore it. I manage my work accounts, but I have some other clients, so I'm on social media. I don't hate social media. I think it has its purpose, but it's also been used very terribly, and it's also, I think, one of the reasons why politics is more vitriolic than ever, than it was. So it's just staying true to who you are and not trying to, and staying focused on what's important. I mean, most of the time, actually all the time he was in politics, we were raising our kids. And so the most important part was being a family, because, we said, look, after you're done, and you're going to be done someday, everything ends. We're still married, we're still family, we have our kids to raise, and it doesn't matter what happened on, July 25th, 2017 in that picture. It did matter. But my point is that your family, and we just remember that, and it's hard not to get caught up and emotional about things. But during that campaign in particular, I would get to work and help. I'd be busy during the day with work, and our son wasn't driving yet, so taking him wherever he needed to be. But at night, I'd be like, give me a phone list, I want to call. And if I could connect with voters and talk with them, that made all the difference. It restores your faith. And even if they weren't an automatic yes, or even if they were a kind no, it's going to happen, I was okay with that, because you're still connecting with people, and you hear their side, or I could bring back questions, too, and that would help to hear what and that's the thing is, I think a lot of times we've lost the art of talking to each other about whether we agree on politics or anything or not. It's just talking and respecting both sides, nicely.
Yeah, bring that back.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to know what your husband is doing now that he's out of office.
He works at, it's called Shoemaker Advisors. It's a law firm in Tampa, but they also have a side that's advisors, which are like, it's not lobbyists, because he's not lobbying, but he's basically bringing people to the table, opening doors for clients. Like if there's a business that wants to come into this area, he will help facilitate a meeting with city governments or help put people together in the same room and represent their interests and stuff. He's also
He's out of the limelight now.
yeah, he's a private citizen at work in a private non-political job. I mean, there's several people who work there. Former Mayor Bob Buckhorn works there. Sandy Merman was I think city council or county commissioner in Tampa, works there. David Jolly works there, which he's a lot of times up in Pennsylvania, but he's on television a lot, former congressman. But he loves it because that's the thing he loved doing most with the city, in his capacity as mayor and even as a legislator, was getting things done and representing people. I talk about this early in the book, but years ago when he opened his law office, he was one guy, and we didn't have kids yet, and my job at the St. Petersburg Times had gone from 40 hours to 28. They were in the early days of paring down their staff, they were paring down the marketing department. They couldn't afford as much on that. So with that said, I'm like, what am I going to do for those other hours I would be working? I went and helped him open his office, and, he didn't have to pay me, because he wasn't getting paid till he settled cases. So it was a while before any money came in. But I would listen to him talking in the office. I'd be in my office, and I'd hear him, and I'd hear the way he talked to clients, and spent so much time on the phone with them. I wouldn't say too much time, but a lot of time, because he wanted to help. And I think in politics, you can come from a place of helping people and, not just what's in it for me and how can I advance myself. And so I think in his roles in politics, and especially as mayor, he was able to bring people to the table and get people in the same room that necessarily couldn't get in there themselves or hadn't done that, and get some things done. And that's what he enjoys doing most, and that's what he's doing now. And he's still a lawyer. I mean, I honestly don't know. A lot of it's timing. A lot of people asked about governor, but that would have had to have started while he was still mayor. They really lobbied him hard for Congress, but he knew, he knew both Ben Diamond and Eric Lynn. Eric Lynn's now, for our district, the one he would have run for. And he's like, well, I'm not going to run against them. They're friends, and plus I have to finish being mayor because, not kidding, they were expecting him to spend 40 hours a week with fundraising calls. And that's a myth maybe some know and maybe some don't know, is the fundraising part of politics takes up a lot of time. And until they change, if they ever change the way fundraising and political campaigns are run, you have to do it. If you're going to be in it, you have to do it. And a lot of times they want to hear from the candidate. They don't want to hear from the candidate's finance person or a friend of a friend of a friend. So it's the candidate making the call.
David Jolly talked about on 60 Minutes.
Oh, okay. Yes, I remember that. Yeah, and it's true. And I don't know how, watching Charlie Crist, I've known Charlie Crist for a long time before he was even in politics, just growing up in St. Pete. He's the constant. You look up politician, that's him. I mean, he loves it, and I say that in the best way, because the energy he has, he lives it and breathes it, and I don't know how he just doesn't seem to get tired.
Now he's asking for money every day on Facebook.
I know. And unfortunately, like I said, he has to. I mean, I get all the texts now because I volunteered for one thing, and they give your name to everybody, even if they say they're not going to. But it just is the way it is. So yeah, he's very happy though, because he loved being mayor, and that was a hard act to follow. So to be happy doing what you're doing, and not trying to look back and, we live here still. We know what's going on and not watch. And of course, every person who has that job is going to do it differently. So it's good that he's busy and not focused on, oh, well, what's he doing, So anyway, well, I thank you guys. Have any more questions or?
I would think that has to be, like, every job, post a political job, has to be just so, like, it's easy. It's like coming back from war. It's like, okay, well, I might be in this position now as a civilian, but try doing this.
I have to say, things are just a lot quieter. We're just like not, we can relax at night, and it's not like we always sat but sometimes there were calls that he got in the middle of the night from the police chief if something happened, and just not being on edge, or just cars that would ride down the street very slowly or sit. We live on a small lake that sit across the lake, or then the next thing you know, a week later, Rick comes home, there's going to be a police car by our house for a couple days, and they wouldn't even tell him after that. It's like people knew. We didn't need to know what the threats were, just that there were threats. And so it didn't happen all the time, but it happened enough, and working from home during part of that, if you're not home, you don't know. You don't see it unless somebody tells you. But I'd be like, oh my God. And then I would start to be like, okay, they're allowed to sit there. It's a public street. So, but it's just, there is an aha, and we're, we just have more time, and we can just relax a little more. And so it is nice. And he still feels like he's serving, even though he's getting paid, he's, helping people. And, he just did accept a board position. And like I said, we raise guide dog puppies. So we're still active, trying to help somehow,
Does the new mayor ask him for advice?
No.
Oh.
But that's okay. Rick they've known each other for 20 years, and Rick told him, you know where I am, you know how to find me, if you ever need anything. And he left him a letter, not trying to be like the president or anything, but he left him a letter, and not that he was telling him what to do, but just some things, to say, take it or leave it. And yeah, but I think everybody, I think especially that first year, and he knew he was coming into coming after a former administration that accomplished a lot of things, and did well. So he's got to make his own way and figure things out. But
I can say as a St. Petersburg citizen, that's really heartful to hear, is that he extended that continuity on behalf of the rest of the citizens of St.
Yeah.
Petersburg, because 8 years is a long time, and I'm sure he's got a lot of institutional knowledge.
Yeah.
Mayor Welch at this point wants to solidify his own,
Yeah.
cabinet
Mhm.
and party moving forward.
Yeah.
But everybody can use a hand now.
Right.
So,
Well, you never know, and Rick in 2009 beat Bill Foster, to win mayor, and he and Bill have a great rapport, but they always got along on city council, and they'd have lunch every few months or so often. And see, that's the thing, if you can just, personally, Bill's conservative, politically he's conservative, we're not, Rick's not, and everybody knows that, but as people, they're wonderful people. And if he and Rick have a true friendship, that they can legitimately just go to lunch as friends, and I think it's wonderful, and unfortunately in an election, in a race, in a game, somebody has to win, and so
nature of it.
yeah, so, but it's nice when you can, continue the relationships, and so, but, well, anyway, well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That was great.
thanks, thank you.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
Kerry.
thank you.
And for everybody who would like to see Kerry and get an autographed book, they are available right over in the gift store bookstore, $18. Thank you, and we'll see you at the next one.